So I have a story I found, and this young lady, she describes an experience that she went through. And I know this might seem outdated. It almost seems unreal, probably to some, because they think that this situation is old, or maybe it has been solved, or maybe they found a cure. Well, let's read into this article. A woman that was diagnosed with HIV at the age of 19 on what she wants others to know. So HIV does not discriminate. So the reason why this article is popping up, I believe, because they're starting to get more cases of young people that are getting infected with HIV. So this is happening again, or it probably never really has stopped, but now it's starting to become more prevalent. And we're learning of that because you don't see articles like this pop up. Mostly you've heard articles about COVID, and you've heard articles about, maybe some of the things that have been currently going on, but not HIV. You're thinking, oh, that was a long time ago. And so apparently it isn't something that just was long ago. It is happening all over again, where a lot of young people are now learning that they can be infected by HIV, and there's basically this story here of this young woman's experience, and so she's trying to let other young people know that this thing is not gone away, it's still here, and the risk is very high for those who don't really know or don't think that this could happen to them. So this is by Rachel Rumman Bender and Jaquie Cosgrove. So this young lady, she's 19 years old. Her name is Marvelyn Brown. She thought she found what she thought was her Prince Charming. And she said at the time she was a Nashville resident who grew up watching Disney princess movies and longed to yearn for that Prince Charming. Brown, who is now, she's 37 years of age, no longer 19, she tells Yahoo Life that she thought she had found the boyfriend, Danny Perry II, that he was the Prince Charming. So although Brown and Perry always used protection, just one night, when Perry shared that he didn't have a condom, the couple had unprotected sex. And so Brown remembers thinking that the worst that could happen from this night was definitely pregnancy. And that was the only fear that she had. But this was my Prince Charming. She felt like that they were in a serious relationship and committed. So she says, knowing that they were in a committed relationship, which helped ally her concerns growing up, that was her only goal in life, was to start her own family. And so what Brown did not know is that he was HIV positive at that time. So in 2020, Perry was convicted of engaging in intimate contact with a woman, not Brown this time, someone else, without disclosing his HIV status, which he knew he was positive. So this is the case of what we're having now. People who know their status, but they still willingly not telling or disclosing their private health history in terms of the sex history, which we all have a health history, we all have a sex history of some sort. Even if you're a person that doesn't engage in it, that's still considered a sex history. If you say you're not intimate, that's a sex history. If you say you've been intimate with multiple people, that's a sex history. You have a history. So unbeknownst to this young lady, I guess he went out, and he had been going out probably who knows how many other women have been caught up in this. So he didn't disclose his HIV status, which is a felony in Tennessee. Different states have different rules, so remember that. Some states are more harder on people and other states might not be as hard. They might be a little more lenient, and that you should worry about. Perry, who allegedly did the same thing to multiple women, is currently serving a 6-year sentence. So 3 weeks later, Brown was in the hospital with pneumonia. A couple of weeks after that, she was diagnosed with HIV. She says that, adding, I immediately thought I was going to die and that my life was over. So she was that sick. And so before being hospitalized and diagnosed with HIV, Brown says that she had she was a healthy girl. She had a healthy, she was young, she was an athlete, she was in track and basketball, she was athletic, and just an all-American teenager. And she says she absolutely did not think HIV was a concern or issue for her and her peers. Okay, so think about it. I mean, you're not thinking that you're going to be sick with something like that. And so Brown, I guess it's for lack of education and not knowing what you could expose yourself to out there. So Brown was not alone. So many people are like this, young people in particular. Young people, HIV or human immunodeficiency virus, which weakens a person's immune system by destroying important cells that fight disease and infection, per Centers of Disease Control, which is better known as the CDC, isn't something that is on your radar. Because when you're young, you're not thinking anything's going to happen to you. You think you got this world by the tail and you can control what happens to you. But that's not how it works. And unfortunately, a lot of people find it out the hard way, like this young lady did. So it isn't something that's on their radar, of course, but as Brown puts it, HIV was not on her radar either until she was told that she was positive. Although young people in the U.S. have never known a world with HIV, okay, and so, or without it, they've never known a world without it, they write that authors in 2016 research paper, American Journal of Public Health, they have no memory of challenging times. So I'm saying the young people of this generation who weren't there during the time when there weren't any medicines and people were fighting for medicines and things like that, and a lot of people were dying, like you just know people dying left and right. They never lived that, so they don't fear this type of stuff until it happens to them, unfortunately. So they have no memory of the challenging times of HIV that was most always fatal before medical science developed effective treatments, and yet the disease is having a significant impact among the young people of today. So that's the unfortunate part. And that's usually what happens. I believe people who don't have knowledge of what those times were, they can't relate to how scary it was and how fearful people were and how more cautious people were when they learned that this virus was that deadly. Um, so you don't fear what you don't know, of course. You know what I'm saying? So, and yet the disease is having a significant impact on young people. So in 2019, there were more than 34,000 new HIV infections in the U.S., according to HIV.gov. Of those, the highest number of new HIV infections among people were aged 25 to 29, which is not surprising to me. In addition, in 2015 through 2019, HIV diagnosis increased. So even having the knowledge and knowing and people maybe hearing about it, that's not going to stop people, make them scared. So among those people were the age of 13 to 24 years old, as well as those diagnosed 35 to 44, 45 to 54 years old. So people are still getting infected. So young people are also the least likely to know their HIV status compared to other groups. So once more, 46% of the sexually active high school students didn't use a condom last time that they had sex. This was according to CDC. So along with the age, race, and also the other factors, both Black and Hispanic Latino communities are disproportionately affected by HIV compared to other racial groups, according to HIV.gov. So 2019, for example, black people made up 13% of the U.S. population, but accounted for 40% of those that are infected with HIV. So black women are also disproportionately affected. HIV compared to women of other races, they tend to be more at risk. So according to HIV.gov, the rate of the new HIV infections among black women is 11 times that of white women and 4 times that of Latina women. So that's pretty serious. But not everyone realizes these risks. So Brown says that she knew nothing about people surviving with HIV. She didn't know or have knowledge of that. Of course, now she probably more than likely has a lot of knowledge on the topic. That's why she wants to warn or give suggestion of help to people who don't know, so or who are not aware. So I didn't know what being HIV positive meant, and I had no idea about the stigma and the discrimination that surrounds that virus. So think about it. Think about this pandemic, COVID. If you have it, if you just sneeze around people, how they stop and look at you. You know how that makes you feel, and you might not have the COVID. You just have a regular cold, but people look at you like, oh, you're infected. So think about somebody with HIV and how that is known, learning about it, and how that is trying to build relationships with other partners, people. You know, how that makes you feel, you know. And there's other diseases out there other than HIV that do the same similar thing that make you feel alienated is a good word to use. But as Brown states, the H in HIV stands for human. Think about it. So if you're a human, you can get this. So anybody can get this. And so it doesn't discriminate. That's what it says in the title. So that's true. So Brown quickly realized not only that I was uneducated, she said at the time, learning about the virus, but a lot of the peers that she around her age, she said they also were not knowledgeable of it. But so she decided to share her story with others, eventually speaking more to 100 colleges and universities across the country. So she travels to talk about HIV and AIDS awareness. She's an advocate for it. So Brown also won an Emmy Award in 2017, Outstanding National Public Service Announcement about HIV awareness, and penned a memoir in 2008, The Naked Truth, Young, Beautiful, and HIV Positive. Okay, so although Brown, if you see her now, says that it was never in her intention to become a public figure or face of HIV and AIDS, it felt like a diagnosis that was not in vain. So for her to be very kind and very bold and open and fearless, I would say, to come out and be an advocate, that's very noble of her. So Brown has spoken to more than 100 colleges and universities around the country to raise awareness about HIV and AIDS awareness. So here she is, pictured here. So although there is no cure, listen to this, there's no cure for HIV. Major advances in treatment, namely antiretroviral therapy, which is abbreviated as ART, have been made since the first reported cases of HIV in the U.S. in 1981. So although HIV is still a major global public health issue, according to the World Health Organization today, HIV people living in the U.S., Canada, receive the treatment early, have a life expectancy that's similar to that of the general population. So that's how it's advanced. It wasn't like that when I first heard of it coming onto the scene. I was here when a lot of people died of it, and they didn't have these drugs. And I'm still here now that they have these drugs, but I'm still hearing this story all over again. It's sad. And so you think people would have learned, but you have a new group of people, new generation of young people who are totally unaware. And this young person, she's doing all she can, and others like her doing all they can to make this thing publicly known to those of her peers. So a significant change from the epidemic's early years when people diagnosed with HIV and AIDS were the only life expectancy to live was 1 to 2 years. I know people that didn't live a year with it once they got it. Maybe not even 3 months. Yeah. So, and in some cases were weeks and months. Exactly. I remember. It wasn't a joke. And people were afraid to go to public restrooms. They were shutting down bathhouses. They were closing down a lot of certain events that were public or that maybe had people gathering. It was almost like another version of COVID, but this was a sexual transmitted thing. So there's even hope for a vaccine. So there, now that they've advanced in the drugs, there's hope for a vaccine. Moderna and IAVI recently launched a clinical trial for a potential HIV vaccine using the same mRNA technology in Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccine. Brown needs to take her antiretroviral medication or antiviral medication every day at the same time, adding that having to swallow 7. Now, she calls them horse pills because the pills are huge. Daily, she has to swallow 7 of them, and it isn't easy. So despite that, she says the discrimination is the hardest part of that virus. Now, that's hard to live with something like that, and if you try to make, get into a new relationship, and then you have to disclose your status, people might hear that and they might turn away instantly. They're thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna die," or "I'm gonna be fatally ill." So, but Brown believes that education is the key to reducing the stigma. So despite the fact that HIV, from the behaviors that put people at risk to how to protect themselves against this virus, has been pushed to sides, she said, they pushed to the side, so people are still getting infected and people are still dying from it. So there are people still dying of HIV, believe it or not. And so now you got COVID. So you're immunocompromised and then you get COVID and that you just really, so that just makes it worse. So it's still important for people to know their status. So sharing her own personal experience is also Brown's way of helping people, particularly young people, understand that this can happen to them as well. I want people to know that I'm just like them, she says, and HIV doesn't discriminate anybody. Anybody can get it. Doesn't matter where you're from, what country, what language you speak, what race you are, background, culture, how your hair look, how your eyes look, you still can get HIV. How smart you are, how whatever, how rich you are, how poor you are, you still can get HIV. So Brown, who has been HIV positive for 19 years, as living a long and healthy life with HIV isn't easy. She knows. That's her credible source. She knows it's not easy living like that because she got to take medicine every day so she can still be around. But I love myself, she says, to protect myself and to keep myself happy. Just always remember I am HIV positive, she says. I'm Marvelyn Brown first. So that is the story of this young lady's triumph. I'll say triumph. I won't say, well, there might have been some struggle along the way with the knowledge of learning and trying to learn of her status, but she triumphed through all of this, and she's become an advocate. And so I think when you see stories like this, it is time to kind of worry a little bit because from what I've seen, it just feels like, the way people have handled this COVID thing, and I'm kind of relaying it to this HIV thing, because they're both viruses. It's just one is contacted a different way, it's still viruses. There's no cure. It's just controlled. And so that's what she's having to take the medicine for the rest of her life. That's probably what's going to happen with this COVID. We'll probably end up having to take like a shot every year. Pills, they're talking about working on pills. I've heard of that. I think it's Pfizer is talking about doing pills that people can take antiviral pills. And then you have this HIV. How do you have a virus that you're already taking medicine for and catch other viruses? Wow, that's got to put your body through a lot. And so I think young people should probably really, really listen to this story. This young lady and others like her are talking about that, know from experience. So if you don't want to listen to older people, which a lot of them are like that, and you know that happened in 1980, blah, 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 whatever. Well, guess what? It's the year 2022, and you have young people like yourself who actually have been infected and they caught this disease, and now they are telling you their stories. And so it isn't nothing to play with. Once you get this, it ain't no pill or no shot that you can take that'll just end it and it'll just disappear. You gotta keep taking those pills. And so, and if you go with somebody who isn't infected and you give it to them, depending on your state, there are consequences that will follow thereafter. Like she was saying, the young man, he's infected multiple women, and he's now serving time because he put their lives in, he changed their lives forever.